Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Grow Rogue podcast. So today I'm joined by Brandon Ansley. Brandon is the CEO of Carter & Clark. They're a land surveying company. Now, I know what you're thinking. You mean those guys on like the side of the road with the little telescope thing drawing on chalk lines on the street? Kind of. So they work with large home builders. And in fact, Carter & Clark is now the largest of their kind in the country. Some background. So Brandon worked for a private equity company that was looking to buy these small town kind of main street businesses. They installed Brandon as the CEO about 3 years ago. And now he credits the founding team a ton. You'll see that in the episode. But what he did in 3 years was double the revenue, and he's built up a backlog of new business of over $50 million, which is a tremendous feat of sales and marketing that we're going to dig into on this episode. So if you are not subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash the like button if you're watching this on YouTube. And definitely take notes because there's a ton of really helpful nuggets in this episode. Let's get going.
Sure. So, people hear land surveying. They imagine, maybe you're driving down the road and you see a surveyor standing there with a tripod with one of those big machine looking things that they're looking through. Somebody has a pole, maybe on the opposite side of the street. And that's typically the extent that of what people understand or know about land surveying. And there, like any industry, there are different niches within land surveying. What we do is we partner with new residential construction with home builders, right? So in particular, large home builders that are building a significant number of houses, maybe in a subdivision or in a particular area. And what people often don't think about is if you want to build a house, whether it's an individual or one of these a large builder, you have all these plans, you have the subdivision plat, you have individual lot plans, but sort of connecting, all right, I want to build this house and I want to build it over here, connecting the plans to an exact point on the earth in terms of where exactly does that mean I need to pour a foundation or if how do I get the plans sort of into reality on the ground? That's where we come in. We, for depending upon the area or the municipality, there are different rules and regulations and laws about building setback lines and, square footage requirements, energy codes. There's a lot of things that dictate sort of what builders can and can't do. And so at the end of the day, we help ensure we determine the positioning and the placement of the house based on the builder's wants and needs and the local municipality rules and regulations so that, it's in between the setbacks and oriented optimally on the actual lot where it's built.
Okay, thanks for that background. And so you guys are not, no offense to anybody who may fit this criteria, but you guys are not like a mom and pop land surveying company, right? You guys are pretty large now, correct?
We are correct. So, the company was started over 30 years ago, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And it started like every business, started very small and did a lot of different types of surveying, and ultimately found that we were really good at this particular niche, which was assisting home builders in a way that allows the home builder to focus on what they do best, which is build the house, right? Our goal ultimately is we just want to make it easier for builders to build houses, and having to deal with understanding the different placement and orientation, et cetera, could be a painful process or cause delays when you're trying to get a permit. And so as we sort of recognized where the company was doing a good job and what our niche was, the founder of the business did an amazing job really doubling down and building out that niche and becoming what we like to say, the best in the world. And then about 4 years ago, we had a private equity partner come and partner with the founder to help provide additional resources and help the business grow. And we've doubled the business since then. Really worked hard to professionalize and systematize a lot of, our internal processes and procedures so that we can, like you said, not be mom and pop, if you will, and professionalize into, organizational entity that has scalable processes at each point throughout the business.
Gotcha. And so that 4 years ago, when the private equity firm got involved, is that when you got involved yourself?
Yeah, no, great question. So, a good friend of mine that I grew up with was part of the initial investment group that identified, this sort of diamond in the rough, if you will. And I had history with home services businesses and field services businesses, running and growing them. So, the board eventually brought me in as CEO about a year and a half after the initial investment.
All right. And so for those listening or watching, I'm going to give like a really brief layman's explanation of how private equity works when it comes to their involvement in an industry like, home surveying, land surveying, for example. So, and Brandon, please correct me. This is your field much more than it is mine. But private equity is essentially backed by a whole bunch of capital. Maybe they've got investors. Sometimes they've got institutional investors, which are banks. But there's a whole lot of money, and there is a desire to purchase businesses, usually in a specific industry, roll them up, which means combining a bunch of different maybe competitors or maybe companies that are in the same field but in a different region or something like that, to try to build something that can then utilize that capital and grow a whole lot faster than one could if they were just starting from the ground up. Is that a decent explanation of how private equity works, and especially within this type of industry?
It is, yeah. So, the way I explain it to folks is that, you have what sort of public equity, right? So, if you're looking to invest a bunch of capital, you can go invest in public stocks. You can invest in Coca-Cola, Home Depot, et cetera. Others, i.e. private equity, they choose to invest in small privately held businesses. And typically they find either exactly like you mentioned, an industry, a niche, or sometimes just even a particular business that in their estimation has a significant opportunity for growth if it had, additional resources or expertise, or if the private equity firm can bring something that would assist in that growth. And, oftentimes the opportunities are immense because, I use this business as an example. There are interesting opportunities that are sort of hidden in industries that you never would really think about or never would imagine getting into, that often have a lot businesses that just significantly benefit from, whether it be systems or additional human capital or just additional investment capital, right? To whether it be buy equipment or real estate or whatever that particular business needs. But that typically there's some sort of plan going in for how the growth would occur. In our case, we have not made any acquisitions to date because, and that's just was not intentional. And we continue to look for acquisitions, but our addressable market is so large, and we have such a small percentage of it, relatively speaking, that we've just leveraged it, other growth opportunities up to this point to achieve our growth. But yeah, you did a great job summarizing it.
Well, I appreciate that. That was my super layman's terms explainer. So, all right. So here's the timeline, right? Company was started, 30 plus years ago. I think you said 30 or 40 years ago. 4 years ago, private equity comes in, either acquires or invests heavily in the business. About a year after that, Brandon comes in and they install you as the CEO. And in that time, you've doubled the revenue. And you told me you guys are sitting on a $50 million backlog of essentially of work to be done. How do you do something like that, especially in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate it. And, it's important. Look, I'm in a fortunate position. The founder of this business and all the people that helped build the foundation are really the ones that deserve the credit for getting it here, frankly. So I personally don't know that I deserve any credit. But with that aside, what I mentioned earlier, trying to professionalize and systematize the processes in order to make sure that everything is scalable. I think that's pretty standard. That's something that we have done. But, my personal philosophy when it comes to, rapid growth with any business, but particularly this one, is it comes down to establishing the right company culture, ensuring that we have the right people, and then executing a strategy that puts the customer first. And I realize that sounds probably like a whole bunch of business speak, or jargon, or catchwords, catchphrases, what have you. But I mean, it really is the truth. It at the end of the day, a business is sort of just this legal fiction, right? A business is not really anything other than the collection of the people within it. And whether you're making widgets or providing land surveys or marketing agency or building calculators, if you have, motivated people that care, that act like they're a part of an owner of the business in terms of the way they make decisions, and are enthused and energized to do the right thing for the customer, I think that's sort of the foundational requirement that really any business needs to grow. And if you have that, it's going to be hard not to grow, in my opinion.
Are there specifics to that, right? So I hear what you're saying from a philosophical standpoint, right? We establish a focus on the customer, a focus on our culture and our people. How do you make that happen, right? If we're putting together a plan for the new year or the next quarter, what does the bullet point have below it, right? What are the subtasks under improve company culture, focus on the customer, right? How do you actually implement that systematically?
Yeah, well, look, that's sort of the $64,000 question, right? I mean, that's the thesis of a book that would sell, 10 billion copies. I won't skirt the question. I mean, you sort of touch right on the nerve there, right? How do you do that? How does one go about ensuring that you have great people and that you have a great company culture and that you put the customer first? I mean, it isn't just one switch that you go flip and then all of a sudden you have it. It's a process that involves all of the thousands of individual decisions that each of your employees make every single day. And you have to start with a vision and then define just a common understanding or sort of a common language about what this means, what this looks like. One of the things, I mean, I'll give you an example, right? A lot of businesses, or us included, we're faced with the opportunity to compete on price, right? We get a call from a customer and they say, well, ABC surveyor just came and they gave us a better price, right? I'm sure that any business owner or CEO or anybody that's ever been in a small business faces this routinely. And you have a choice. You can decide to compete on price and say, okay, well, we'll match that, or we'll come in with a lower price. Or you can, have the backbone to try to make sure that, wait a minute, are we comparing apples to apples here? And understand, is it truly a case that what we are providing is sort of a fungible commodity that it just is based on price? Or are there additional factors involved, like the support that's required when there might be an issue in the field, or that there are additional sort of what some people would consider hidden values and services that we might provide versus somebody else, to recognize the importance of the relationship, the support, and the ability to sort of put yourselves in the customer's shoes to understand and talk through, look, this isn't, price is just one factor in this equation. And so if you don't have people, if you've never talked about that within your business, or you haven't maybe walked through what's important and how to deal with that situation and how we look at it, what's our philosophy, shown your sales team examples, walked through, done role playing to try to, strengthen sort of confidence in being able to attack those objections, then you're always going to compete on price because you haven't invested the time and effort and energy into the team to show what we're trying to strive for. And look, we could sit in a conference room or in a training room and role play and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And when you're out in the real world, it never happens like that. But the point is that you have invested in your people to try to get everybody on the same page and understand, what is it that we collectively as a team value? How do we think about these scenarios? And how does it relate to our vision and our culture? And are we willing if that time comes, are we willing to let a customer go if they demand that the only thing that matters is price? And when I say it's the culture, it's the people, it's the relationships, that's more of the sort of getting down into the level of detail, the nitty gritty about it. You can't just get the right people and then say, okay, go. And then we get the right people, but it's not happening. I mean, it is a constant process of working together to try to, whether it be from day to day, week to week, month to month, to stay aligned on, all right, look, we're all pushing in the same direction, and here's the direction we're pushing, and here's why. And then these are the things that we're most likely going to encounter along the way. And, talking through how do we attack those particular scenarios? What's the overall intent for how we're going to get there, so that when your folks are in the position, or when you do find yourselves, whether it's on the front line trying to make a sale, or whether it's, supporting the customer when they have a question, or whether it's just, being at a holiday party where there's a customer, whatever that might be, that the ultimate mission is ingrained in sort of the bones of all of your employees. And so that whether it were you standing there, or one of your teammates that, is on the sales team, everyone's confident that, everyone's going to say it their own different way, but you probably would have said that around the same thing, because you're all want to get to this particular place. And so that's a very long, convoluted answer to a simple question. But I do think that, you ask sort of the unanswerable question, which is sort of, how do you do it? And it's a difficult thing to do.
Well, so your answer and what you're saying, and this is something I believe about business too. And I believe that the myth of just hire people that are great and then let them go, it's just that, it's a myth. I think, yes, you hire great people. That's super important. But without vision, the people perish, right? There does need to be a super clear vision, and what I think is those guardrails, and some people will call this like mission, vision, values, and stuff like that. But it's those guardrails to say that, hey, we've got great people that we believe can achieve this vision or help us achieve this vision. And these are the boundaries. These are the guardrails. This is the culture that we're trying to achieve. And this is what we won't bend on. And these are these things that you need to operate within. It's like putting a great athlete on a random patch of grass and saying, hey, be a good sport, right?
Right.
Like, be good at this. No, you put them, they need to be on a field with lines, given some rules, and a ball with a specific objective, get the ball across this particular white line, which happens to be the end zone. And then you let them play. That's when you have to step back and say, look, I can't play for you now, but I've provided all of the structure. There's a playbook that we practice and all that good stuff. So to me, that's what you described. And that's how you win in business. At least that's what I've seen these last 10 or 15 years. I do want to dig in a little bit, Brandon. So I appreciate the humility. I appreciate the focus on team and culture, but you guys have done something from a sales and marketing perspective, something our audience is super interested in, that is not a small accomplishment. You guys have doubled revenue, and you've built up a huge backlog of work that's ready for you, right? Are there specific things you guys did there? I mean, do you have a sales team? Is there a marketing system in place? Is there something you guys have done intentionally to build up that pipeline of new business?
Yes, that's a great question. So the way that our business works is we have fantastic clients, and our clients continue to order from us, right? So we have long-term relationships with our clients, where some of which have been with us for, over a decade. It's very different if you're in maybe a retail establishment or a business that has one-time sales. But in a B2B business like ours, that sells a service, that provides a service to another business on an ongoing basis. You mentioned, do we have a sales marketing strategy? The first thing I would say to that is that given our scenario, sales really happens sort of across the entire company. One of the first things that we did when I came in is we outlined and mapped in very specific detail the customer journey. And what what I mean by that is, like, where does this all start, right? Does this, whether it's a phone call or a chance meeting or, a warm introduction, but from that point, what are all of the other different touch points that we engage with our clients throughout the service process? So like the setup, and then the ordering, the individual lot ordering process, and then the support function. Well, even though we have a sales team, which I'll get to in a second, that brings on new customers and helps support our existing customers, at each point along the way in that customer journey, there's another sale that's happening. That if we're providing a service to our client and there's an issue in the field and a builder is calling to get support, they're calling our support team, our customer experience team. That is part of the sale. If we're not available and don't respond immediately and can't get the right resources or information, they're not going to come order their next. They're not going to award us their next subdivision. They're going to find somebody that can do that. And so I think it's important to understand, what is it like as a customer to work with you as a business? And it's not just, they're sold, and then you sort of throw them into the sold bin, and then they interact with different departments or different people. It's a constant. We have to meet or exceed the customer's expectations at every single touch along the way. With regard to our actual, our specific sales team, how to get new customers, et cetera, one thing that I personally feel like is absolutely critical, that is often not discussed or not talked about or missed in business, is the ability for your sales team to exercise empathy. And what I mean by that is, how well can your sales team really, really genuinely put themselves in their customers' shoes, right? And understand, okay, let me think for a minute. My customer, what do they care about? What's important to them? And what are they trying to accomplish? What's the customer trying to accomplish? And from that perspective, how would they, if I were the customer and I were trying to interact with us as a business, what would I want? What would be important to me? And how would I want to be spoken to? How would I want to feel? What would be the things that I would want to hear an emphasis on? And it's surprising that, there are, you could do sales training for, 20 years and still not get to the end of the sales training. But the fundamental sort of relationship skill or interaction skill about being intentional and purposeful about putting yourselves in the customer's shoes to try to understand how they want to be dealt with is, to me, can go a very long way. And especially, in a B2B business like ours, it's missed. It's totally missed all the time, that what we think is important, whether we were talking about price earlier, right? If it's all about price, it's the only thing that matters. What we think is important is irrelevant, right? I mean, we can draw conclusions on what the customer believes is important and the way that they think the customer journey should go. That is what is critical. And if it is, I act like it's easy. It's not easy, but with being thoughtful and being intentional about asking questions and trying to understand from the customer's perspective, and then setting up the process and the support based on what they would like. If you can get that right, then, be turning a lot of business down, I think. And so, specifically on the marketing front, I mentioned the importance of sort of understanding the customer and understanding the customer journey. What we found to be, a valuable or call it a great tactic, if you will. I mean, that sort of cheapens it. But if you can understand what's important to your customer and what they look at, what are the things that they look at? What are the things that interest them? And we use a platform called HubSpot. But if you could, whether it's email automation or some other type of, whatever type of communication works for that business, but to keep our name in front of our customers and our brand just relevant and in front of our customers. We don't spam them with a bunch of junk about us, but if we figure out what it is, do they check the Wall Street Journal housing starts, once a month or whatever? Well, if we find that out, then we'll go back and set up and send them an email, very short, not overwhelm them, but with things that we think that they or have been told that they find relevant and want. So we keep our name and our brand in front of them on a regular basis, but we don't deliver them content that we want to deliver to them. We try to deliver them content that we know that they want to see or digest. And that's been a big change for us. I think the easiest thing to do is to sort of want to just shoot everybody a customer about, look how great we are. Look at, oh, we did this and we did this. Look how, and don't you want to do more business with us? But we've been successful. We've had some success, and I think it makes sense to here's what you think. Here's what you read. Here's something that might be interesting to you or your business. And, for whatever that's worth, I think on the marketing side, it should also be about the customer, not necessarily a story about the business that's sending the marketing.
Last question, Brandon. If you could go back 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when you started here, if you could do one thing and only one thing differently that would have put you in a better position, what would that be?
It's a fantastic question. I spend more time with our customers. So, the first 100 days as a new leader are critical and can be overwhelming, very lonely. And it's often, if you're not careful, you sort of let the machine, just drive you, right? In terms of everything that happens. Really, really, really going and spending more time with the customer to see things from their eyes. I just think that's invaluable, and doing it twice as much as I did before. I would have gotten twice as much insight.